Hey legends, what's up? It's Darkmech here and welcome back to another video. Today, I wanted to give you a look inside and my first impressions and thoughts around one of the new dungeons. Dog walking in the door. Mate, you are a piece of work. I wanted to give you a look inside one of the new dungeons coming in Dragonflight, and that is of course Uldaman Legacy of Tyr. So do note, these are not dungeon guides. I will of course do dungeon guides when they release, but right now I just wanted to give you a brief look inside the dungeon, explain the lore going on inside, give my impressions on the layout, the design, the mobs featured in there, the bosses, and just hopefully get you excited for this dungeon and what's to come. So Uldaman Legacy of Tyr is a revamped version of Uldaman, and if you played in vanilla like me, you will remember this dungeon. I played in vanilla, by the way. Did I tell you that? The dungeon sees you traveling through hidden tunnels and halls to the Vault of Tyr, where you end up encountering the infinite Dragonflight. Now, it appears from my expert knowledge in lore here that we are on a mission for the aspects to attempt to find a disc, and this disc would attempt. Can just hear that motherfucker moving in the background. Now, this disc would assist the aspects in regaining their power. The infinite Dragonflight makes mention in the dialogue about Murozond being the only aspect to be infinite, and a quick Google search, because I know things, shows that Murozond is a corrupted future version of Nozdormu. Nozdormu. We eventually fought Murozond in the dungeon end time back in Cataclysm, and we closed that time loop. Though Nozdormu, what the fuck is wrong with you? Though Nozdormu, why are you saying Nozdormu? Dormu. Though Nozdormu warned it would eventually come to be again. It would appear that the infinite Dragonflight is trying to get Nozdormu to go full Snickers again and become Murozond. The dungeon itself looks great. I really mean this. The more I've ran through this dungeon and taken in all the details, the more I've actually been impressed with it. The updated graphics and textures, they managed to keep that old style feelings of the vault, especially with the flooring and the dig sites, but they have managed to completely modernize it into the current content and theme of Dragonflight at the same time. It's a very linear style dungeon, sadly, with loads of line of sight points that will likely lead to creative pull strategies, and there is a lot of trash in, dare I say, pointless locations throughout the dungeon. It's a 5 boss dungeon, which I think is probably going to hurt its favorability in Mythic Plus. As I mentioned, there is a lot of trash throughout the dungeon, and I guess from a positive standpoint here, there is lots that you can skip. And I guess from that, it probably should generate some interesting pathing options for mob count in Mythic Plus, though it does immediately kind of give off the long 40 to 45 minute dungeon vibes for Mythic Plus.
Let's go, in and out, 20 minutes adventure.
The Trog style mobs that were originally featured in the dungeon do well to start things off, and as you progress deeper into the depths of the dungeon, you encounter dwarfs, spiders, bats, snake people, and eventually the invasion of the infinite Dragonflight. The trash is pretty stock standard throughout the dungeon in regards to abilities. There are some hard hitting abilities like bludgeon smashes from the berserkers when they're enraged. These gave me a real throwback vibe to that right side pathing in Junkyard back in BFA. I like the rock throws from the rock throwers here. They actually select a target and throw a rock, and then there's a projectile zone on the ground that you have to dodge, rather than just pelting rocks and hitting players regardless of aggro. Outside of these styled abilities, the trash doesn't seem to be too modernly complex. There's a few AoE, smash and stun abilities, and other just normal run of the trash mob abilities that you would expect. And I don't think this is a bad thing. I think it's quite a good balance in striking that balance between old and new. I will mention though that it does appear that the Custodian's ability, Jagged Bite, is acting as a fervent strike mechanic at the moment. So if you move too far out of range on these mobs, it will turn and hit the next closest target. And I'd kind of hope that we were done away with fervent strikes, moving from Shadowlands into Dragonflight. So we'll have to see if that's intended or if that's in fact going to stay. Looking at the bosses throughout the dungeon, 5 bosses as mentioned at the start, and obviously we've only seen these from a normal and heroic point of view at the moment, so more complex mechanics may very well be added in their mythic counterparts. The first boss is the Lost Dwarves, which is a throwback to one of Blizzard's old games, the Lost Vikings. You fight 3 dwarves here. Olaf will do a leap to a location that's telegraphed on the ground and plant his shield, reduces damage within that area. Balog will target a player and fire an arrow at them, dealing damage to anyone within the radius. And lastly, they'll all get in a ship and drop bombs on the ground. You don't want to stand in them, and they leave loads of magma puddles on the ground. The second boss is Bromack. He has a massive thundering slam smash zone that you need to move out of. He'll spawn adds via an ability called Call of the Deep, and he'll drop a quaking totem that you all need to switch to, and when you kill it, it stuns the boss and the adds. From here you have an option to clean up the adds or get some free DPS on the boss. The smaller adds will obviously be an advantage here to leave up for classes that have funnel, so again, pretty stock standard boss, but it's a cool boss as well. The third boss is Sentinel Telondrus, gains a buff called Inexorable, I think it was, and to remove it you need to kite the boss through the resonating orbs on the ground. Now the orbs will stun you for 6 seconds if you run into them or anyone else, but you want to move the boss into them to remove this buff. The boss also has a crushing stomp ability that does a knockback, so you need to watch your positioning. It also has a bleed called Earthen Shards that goes out onto players throughout the encounter. It's a cool looking boss. It kind of gave me vibes back to Karsh Steelbender, where you as the tank had to take him through the lava each time to bring the debuff on him. It's certainly not the same, but it's still got that same responsibility around the tank, having to maneuver the boss through one of those orbs when the buff comes up to ensure this fight goes smoothly. The fourth boss, Emberon, probably be a checkpoint for a lot of groups, I think, moving through this dungeon for the first time, especially if this is a featured dungeon in Mythic Plus. It's a golem style boss. You need to dodge the fire orbs that come out, has a frontal smash that goes on the tank. He'll activate 3 golems in normal and 4 golems in heroic around the room, indicated by a fire shield around them, and explode the middle when this occurs. So you need to get out of the middle, you need to go to the activated golems and destroy them whilst dodging a fire line that is rotating around the room on both sides. So pretty cool boss there, and the room is magnificent. The fifth and final boss is chrono-lord Dios. It's basically a very similar reskin fight to Murazond. So you get puddles of sand that'll spawn on the ground, and they will move, meaning at higher levels of this encounter you'll be moving around quite a bit and the ground will be filling up with sand. There's a frontal breath that tracks on you as the tank. The boss will rewind time similar to the hourglass on Murazond in end time. And you get a Giga haste buff when you're in this rewind time if you go and stand in the sand to help you try and kill the boss before the room fills up with sand. So it's kind of got a good mix of bosses in there. And as I said, I think they've done a pretty good job at sort of reskinning a dungeon and having this nice balance between old and new. So all in all, I do think they've done a really good job and revamping the old dungeon. I have to say I'm a really big fan of Blizzard continuing down this pathway. I think there's a plethora of old amazing content out there that is just sitting in the world of Warcraft. And if they can find a way to repurpose that content, fit it into a theme of an expansion and update it, then I'm absolutely all for Blizzard doing that. My biggest complaint with this dungeon, as I mentioned, is it's just very linear. It's 5 bosses and it's going to be quite a long dungeon, I feel, in a Mythic Plus format if it makes it there. However, it is a gorgeous looking dungeon. The first few times I ran it, I really didn't give the design much credit. When I went back to get footage for this video, I really did notice just how gorgeous this dungeon is and how much work has gone into so many details and the rooms for these bosses. So full respect for Blizzard for breaking the mold on old content and bringing it back like this. I don't know, as I said, if we'll see this dungeon make its way into the Season 1 Mythic Plus rotation. It will be interesting if it does to see the reception it gains though. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. See you, fam.